What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp podcast. I am here with Tim,
Yo.
as always, and today we are going to be doing some NHL Awards predictions. So, obviously, with the suspension of the NHL regular season, and them going to announce that, or they have announced that if we return to play, it's going to be directly into the playoffs. That means we can start talking about regular season awards and who we think should get them and why. So I threw together a list. Now, I know that the NHL usually announces official finalists for these awards, but these are just my picks of guys who I think should be in consideration for these awards, and you can feel free to tell me, be like, they already gave finalists, and if you just ignore the first part of the podcast, then that's probably what you'll do. But anyway, um, before we go into the awards, however, the NHL did announce its Hockey Hall of Fame 2020 class today, and we just want to give a congratulations to the guys and women that got in. So the Hockey Hall of Fame class in 2020 was Ken Holland for the builder category, and then the players were Marian Hossa, Jarome Iginla, Kevin Lowe, Doug Wilson, and Kim St. Pierre. So congratulations to those guys, and I do want to talk just briefly about them because we'll talk about Marian Hossa and Jarome Iginla. Ken Holland obviously is still active in the general manager field, but Jarome Iginla and Marian Hossa were two players that were big name players during what I consider my formative years of learning the game and really starting to appreciate the game. So I'll just rattle off some of their stats, and then we'll kind of talk about what they meant to us. So Marian Hossa played in 1,309 NHL games, 525 goals, 609 assists, 1,134 points, three-time Stanley Cup champion, all with the Chicago Blackhawks. And Jarome Iginla played 1,554 games, 625 goals, 675 assists, 1,300 points on the dot. He brings a Mark Messier NHL Leadership Award, NHL Foundation Player Award, an Art Ross, two-time Maurice Richard, one-time Ted Lindsay, and one-time King Clancy. So we'll start with Iggy. So, Tim, when I say the name Jarome Iginla, what comes to your mind?
Um, Honestly, I just think of the end of his career when he was jumping around from different teams, trying to win that cup at the end of his stretch because he didn't get it as like he wanted.
Yeah, he had a rough end to his career. He jumped from the Calgary Flames, he went to the Pittsburgh Penguins, then the Bruins. He played 3 seasons with the Avalanche, and then he finally ended his career with the LA Kings. Never won a Stanley Cup. Probably one of the better players to go down and never win a Stanley Cup. Um, yeah, I mean, when I think of Iggy, the thing that comes to my mind is just humble, uh, a humble leader. You know, he was always willing to go into the trenches for his boys. He's always willing to stir up, stir the pot, get involved, and defend a teammate. But always just a humble guy. Just did his job. He wasn't very fancy, but I mean, nobody asked Jarome Iginla to be fancy. And just a great ambassador for the game, I think. I've gone on record in saying that I wasn't a huge fan of him when he was in Pittsburgh and Boston. I think when he went to those two teams, Jarome Iginla in Calgary always walked the line, but when he went to those two teams, he always crossed the line more than he walked it, I think. But I think that's just a product of maybe a little desperation trying to get that cup and maybe just the teams he was playing on. But all in all, I think Iggy had a wonderful career. And it's a shame that he never won a cup. I mean, it really is. Do you agree with me saying that he's probably one of the better players to go down and never win a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I'd say he's one of the best leaders to never win a cup. Usually, leaders like him stand out and excel, elevating their team's game, and they wind up winning a cup.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate that that's just one of those things where he never got accomplished that. But he did have a great career, brings a lot of hardware. And so, what about Marian Hossa? When I say the name Marian Hossa, what do you think of?
Honestly, I think of the only player to move Patrick Kane to the other wing.
Yeah. I mean,
Like the only guy who was one of the only guys who was like, "Yo, you're going to the other wing because I want this one," and he was like, "All right." Could you imagine doing that?
walking on a team with Patrick Kane and being like, I'm playing right wing today.
This is my spot.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think if I remember the stat, actually, I think that was Patrick Sharp. Never mind. But yeah, I just like it's hard to think because it's funny. Most of his career, technically by number of years, was played outside of Detroit, or not Detroit, Chicago. But like he's a Blackhawk. When I picture him, I see him in the Blackhawk uniform, and I mean, how can you argue three-time Stanley Cup champion? Always consistently just 50 points, 50 points, 70 points. He put up 31 in the shortened season, then 60, 61. It really wasn't until the end of his career when he only put up 33 and 45. And I mean, just a consistent player. Always in the 20 goal range, hit 30 goals, hit 40 goals. Like, just a great hockey player. And I think similar to Jerome McGinley, maybe not as much of a leader, but just quiet, just did his job, got on the ice, and he just put the puck in the back of the net. Um, and I think that's just kind of the legacy that Marian Hossa is going to leave. Just did his job. He's not fancy, he's not flashy, he's not loud. He's just Haas. He's just Haas the boss. So just want to congratulate those guys and Kim St. Pierre as well for making it to the Hockey Hall of Fame. We won't speak on the other members just because we don't know as much about them, and I don't want to pretend to know about their careers as much, but just as much of a congratulations to those guys as well. Before we move on, there was an interesting question that I just want to ask real quick. When the Sedins are eligible for the Hockey Hall of Fame, do they have to go in together, or do you think that it's possible they'll go in separately?
Considering that I personally believe some of their best years playing was separated, I think that they could go in separate. I doubt they will. Considering that they were drafted together, I assume that they'll just go down together.
It's just funny because we always think about the Sedins being together and always doing everything together. I think they'll probably go in together just because, it's just that's the legacy, it's just the Sedin twins. I think there are just certain players that are just intertwined. Like I'm almost positive at this point, if Alex Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom retire the same year, that they'll also go into the Hall of Fame together, in the same draft, in the same class. Just because for as long as they've been playing together, Nick Backstrom has almost always been Ovechkin's center, and that Backstrom to Ovechkin pass on a power play, like that's just iconic. So that was just a little weird aside. I saw that question posted today on Twitter, and I just wanted to ask you about that.
Now recording.
So now that we're getting into the kind of meat and potatoes here of the episode, let's talk NHL awards. So we'll start off with the statistical ones that there's no debate about. The Rocket Richard Trophy goes to Alexander Ovechkin and David Pastrnak, who both scored 48 goals. I think Austin Matthews was at 47 when the stoppage happened. So Ovi and Pastrnak get to share that award. The Art Ross goes to Leon Draisaitl with 110 points. And the William M. Jennings Trophy goes to Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak. So we'll leave the Hart Trophy for last because I think that's the one that a lot of people love to talk about, obviously league MVP. And we'll go to Calder Trophy first. So my picks for the finalists were Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Dominic Kubalik, and my winner was Quinn Hughes, with an honorable mention to Adam Fox, Elvis Merzlikins, and Victor Olofsson. What do you think about the Calder Trophy class this year?
I think it's a pretty good one, honestly. Between Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes alone, got some real fucking talent there, honestly. Like, two of the best rookies, both defensemen too, which makes it even more interesting. We're not getting these just, centers like every other year, or these wingers who just come and tear up the league when they're like McDavid or Matthews or whoever else it may be. So I love it. I love this class.
So what do you think about Adam Fox? I threw him in here on an honorable mention because he did put up a boatload of points for a defenseman, a rookie defenseman.
I think Adam Fox is phenomenal, but he won't get the credit that he deserves.
Do you think that's just because he's overshadowed maybe by someone like Artemi Panarin?
100%. He's just he's not the name of the team, and he's not the face of the team. Yeah. When you think of Rangers defense, even though he's garbage at this point, you probably think of Mark Stahl.
I would say either Mark Stahl or when I think of young Rangers defensemen, I think a lot of people will think of Tony DeAngelo.
Tony Pepperoni.
Yeah, Mr. No More Politics on my Twitter, and then 2 days later he's tweeting out
Mr.
politics stuff. But
excuse me, Meatball. Ooh, I burped. Strange.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, in theory, you really could see if Adam Fox gets enough votes, you could see 3 defensemen for the Calder Trophy this year, and like, I don't think that's happened at least in our lifetime. So do you agree with Quinn Hughes, or could you maybe see somebody like Cale Makar or Dominic Kubalik taking the Calder Trophy?
I'm a big proponent of Quinn Hughes. I think Makar and Kubalik both are phenomenal rookies. Obviously, their numbers and their performance backs it up. But Quinn Hughes, it is the face of the Canucks right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't think there's any denying like his popularity amongst his skill.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's just one of those things where I hate to say almost like, oh, Cale Makar is playing for the Colorado Avalanche, but I mean, to a certain extent, Cale Makar is playing for the Colorado Avalanche. And not that the Colorado Avalanche really have a fantastic defense by any stretch of the imagination. I think their defense is just good. I don't think it's great. I think that Quinn Hughes really anchors that Vancouver Canucks defense, and he brings a lot to the table in his own zone that Cale Makar might not. And I think overall, I think he just is a solid two-way defenseman. And not that again, this is going to come up when we do the next trophy, the James Norris, but when it comes to if I'm picking between defensemen, I'm always going to go, almost always, I should say, going to go with the defenseman that's better in his own zone. So Quinn Hughes, along with his offensive capabilities, does do better in his own zone than Cale Makar does, so we'll give it to Quinn Hughes. Interestingly enough, in the beginning of the season, I had Quinn Hughes as a finalist, but I also picked Jack Hughes and Capo Caco, and they kind of didn't really do enough this year to land themselves on the ballot. But
Caco Poopy.
Yeah, they had some growing pains this year for sure. Capo Caco especially got bounced around the lineup a bunch.
Capo Caca balls, poopy balls.
I don't know if he's that bad.
No, he's not.
But he definitely struggled his first year. But not everyone's gonna come into the league like Connor McDavid. So, speaking of defensemen, though, we'll move on to the James Norris Trophy. My pick for finalists this year was John Carlson, Roman Josi, and Victor Hedman. I gave honorable mentions to Quinn Hughes, Zach Werenski, and Thomas Chabot. But ultimately, my winner is going to be John Carlson. So what do you think about the James Norris Trophy crop this year?
It's really tough. John Carlson ran amok on the league the whole first month and a half, 2 months or whatever it was, and just destroyed everyone. So he was able to just coast and score a point every 3 games or whatever it was towards the end of the season, and was just coasting through. But how do you take away from what he did?
Yeah, I know.
So
Like some people are saying that the winner should be Roman Yossi because Roman Yossi had similar numbers but is also better in his own end. And like I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, when it comes to James Norris voting, I almost always will be a bigger proponent of the guy that's actually good in his own end. So normally, if you gave me a choice between John Carlson, Roman Yossi, and Victor Hedman, I'd be pushing for Victor Hedman. I love Victor Hedman because he's just absolutely rock solid in his own end. He's reliable. He's consistent. But John Carlson just had an otherworldly season for a defenseman this year, and it's just really hard to argue those offensive numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think it's damn near impossible. I don't know how you could argue it. Unless you're one of those people like we said before. If you're a defenseman guy, then I could see why you don't want him to get it. But in all reality, he deserves it.
yeah, I mean, you could argue Roman Yossi because Roman Yossi did put up 65 points. He's no slouch in the offensive zone either. And some people will argue that, Roman Yossi is better in his own end. John Carlson put up 15 goals, 60 assists for 75 points. So he only had 10 more points, but 10 more points as a defenseman is like, an insurmountable lead. And John Carlson is no slouch in his own end. He's not great. He's not an elite defenseman, but he's not bad. He's not like an Erik Karlsson from his rookie season or a Brent Burns ever throughout his whole career. He's not bad in his own end. So, 75 points in 69 games. If you're leading the Washington Capitals in points, you're doing something right. Like when you're leading guys like Alex Ovechkin or Nick Backstrom or Evgeny Kuznetsov, yeah, you know what? This man should probably win, the James Norris Trophy. Yeah, he had 8 more points than Alex Ovechkin did. So, and he was plus 12 where Ovechkin was minus 12. So,
yeah, how do you really? Where's your argument gonna lie?
You could say Roman Yossi, I think if you're going to argue for anybody, it has to be Roman Yossi. Oh, well, Roman Yossi had 65 points and the next closest guy only had 48. So he had 17 more points than the first closest forward. But, the point per game that Carlson was putting up, I think, was Paul Coffey-like numbers. So it's just an absolutely otherworldly season from John Carlson this year. He had 26 power play points. Jesus. So, yeah, I think that's kind of, I think Victor Hedman, I put him on there because I think he's a great defenseman, but I don't really think he has a shot. I think this is a 2-horse race, and I think John Carlson's got the inside edge. Although I did want to give a shout out to Thomas Chabot and his 35 minutes a night or whatever ridiculous number of minutes he plays in Ottawa because nobody else can play defense on that team.
They tried their best, okay?
If they gave out a time on ice award, Thomas Chabot would have that locked down. So next up we have the Selkie Trophy. So I put my finalists as Patrice Bergeron, Sean Couturier, and Ryan O'Reilly with an honorable mention to Anze Kopitar. And I went with a bit of an underdog choice. I don't think he's actually going to win it in real life, but my pick would be Sean Couturier. I'm interested this year. What do you think about the Selkie Trophy race this year?
I don't. The real issue is that I don't pay enough attention, honestly, to who should win the Selkie. If we're just going to be completely honest, while watching the game, mostly because we don't really get to watch many of the games that the contestants get to play in, or that your finalists will say, but they're probably most people's finalists. So while we don't get to watch them very much, I pick Ryan O'Reilly, just because I have seen a decent amount of him, and I think he's just a ferocious beast. He's big, like lumberjack scary, trucking through everyone, going.
I think he will probably win it in real life. I think ultimately
Hello?
either him or um, I think either Ryan O'Reilly or actually I think Patrice Bergeron has the inside track. You can hear me now, right, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay, that was weird. I think Patrice Bergeron has the inside track. I think he's probably going to win in real life. I think Ryan O'Reilly is a good second choice. I honestly do think that Sean Couturier is probably the least likely out of those three to win it between Bergeron, Couturier, and Ryan O'Reilly. And I really can't argue with Ryan O'Reilly that much. I mean, he put up 61 points in 71 games. He's a plus 11. He's only got 10 penalty minutes, so he's not hurting his team. His face-off numbers are good. I know they're above 50%. And that's really what you're looking for in a center, honestly, at this point, is just win 50% or more of your face-offs. But I picked Sean Couturier because he's got 59 points in 69 games. He's got more goals than Ryan O'Reilly. He's got 22. Ryan O'Reilly had 12. He has a little bit more penalty minutes. He has 30. But I think it was really the fact that he's a plus 21, and his face-off numbers, I think, were like 59%, like 59.6.
Ryan O'Reilly, 7 or 56.5.
Yeah, so like that's a really, really good number. I mean, that's a solid face-off percentage. Like I said, you're really looking for anything above 50 for a quality center. So it comes down to like nitpicks almost. It's like Ryan O'Reilly has a couple more points. He's not as much of a plus. Sean Couturier has more points, more plus, better face-off percentage, but Ryan O'Reilly also has less penalty minutes. Ryan O'Reilly has more power play points, so he's more of a utility player. So it's like, it's kind of like splitting hairs almost. I just want to see Sean Couturier get some credit because I do think he's one of the best two-way forwards in the NHL. And I just don't think he really gets enough credit for it. But I think in reality what will happen is it'll either be Patrice Bergeron or Ryan O'Reilly. And honestly, if that happens, I really won't be mad because it's like those are two fantastic two-way forwards. If I could choose who would win, it'd be Sean Couturier with Ryan O'Reilly as secondary. But I don't get a vote. I'm not important enough to get a vote. And look.
You got that right, buddy.
And look, Ryan O'Reilly, I mean, he's an anchor on that Blues team. There's a reason that he won the Conn Smythe last year, Like, the dude does his job and he does it well. So, next up, we have the Vezina Trophy. The finalists in my book are Tuukka Rask, Connor Hellebuyck, and Andrei Vasilevsky, with honorable mentions to Ben Bishop, Jordan Binnington, and Carter Hart. And my pick is Connor Hellebuyck. What do you think about the Vezina Trophy race this year? And can I convince you that it's not Tuukka Rask like everyone is saying on all the articles?
I also had Hellebuyck. I don't know if you remember, but I gave him all the credit in our playoff discussions. He was my guy. I love him this season. I think he played great. I think he did exactly what he needed to with a team that needed him to step up.
Yeah, and
to be honest, how many times have we seen the actually statistically best goalie get snuffed on the Vezina? Like, way too many. So snuff the guy. So snuff Rask off the ballot. Who cares? Who cares if he probably actually deserves it? And give it to Hellebuyck.
Yeah, I think this year more than ever, you have to look at the eye test for who's gonna or who should win the Vezina, because statistically speaking, sure, it should probably go to Tuukka Rask. He has better save percentage, better win percentage, better basically everything. Like Tuukka Rask has a 9.29 and a 2.12, and he's won 26 out of his 41 games. Connor Hellebuyck uh, doesn't have as many wins as Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky has 35. Hellebuyck has 31. Vasilevsky has a 9.17 and a 2.56. Hellebuyck has a 9.22 and a 2.57. But Connor Hellebuyck has 6 shutouts, and Vasilevsky has 3. And I think the eye test is super important this year because, sure, Tuukka Rask had a great year, but Tuukka Rask also has Yaroslav Halak on his team, and Yaroslav Halak also played fantastic for them this year. If I could find Halak's numbers.
I think kind of the issue is, though, that every goalie who is in the race kind of had a great backup.
Like, Halak played 31 games. Rask played 41 games. Halak had a 9.19 and a 2.39.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, these guys all had great backups. So, like, when they stepped out for games, they didn't, like, it wasn't like, oh, if he steps out, we're going to lose. Like, we need him to make this race. It's, oh, okay, throw him in there. That's fine.
Well, I assume you mean everyone besides Connor Hellebuyck?
Yeah.
Because Hellebuyck has Laurent Brossoit, and that's not to throw shade at Laurent Brossoit, but he's not a Yaroslav
I'm referring to
Halak.
everyone who I didn't.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Vasilevsky still had Curtis McElhinney, and Tuukka Rask obviously has Yaroslav Halak. Tuukka Rask only played in 41 games this year. Connor Hellebuyck played in 58. And he has a 31, 21, and 5 record with 6 shutouts. But you have to look at the teams that these guys are playing behind. I mean, Tuukka Rask is playing behind one of the best defensive teams in the NHL in the Boston Bruins. Even the forwards are great at defense. Andrei Vasilevsky is playing on Tampa Bay Lightning. They're just an all-around solid team. Sure, they struggled in the beginning of the year, but they put it together, and guess what? Now they're one of the best teams in the NHL again. They have Victor Hedman on defense. They still have guys like Kevin Shattenkirk, who's okay. But they have pieces there like Victor Hedman's an elite defensive defenseman. The Winnipeg Jets don't really have that. And I should also mention that Anthony Cirelli.
Oh, I cannot hear you right now if you're brother.
Anthony Cirelli was a guy that they were saying could potentially be a Selkie Trophy candidate. And people were saying that Anthony Cirelli might be up for the Selkie this year. So that's another thing that Andrei Vasilevsky has going for him. Whereas Connor Hellebuyck, who's their best defenseman? Neil Pionk, Sami Niku. I mean, these guys are going to be great in the future, but they're just not there now. But yet Connor Hellebuyck dragged this team kicking and screaming into a playoff race in the second best division in hockey. Honestly, actually, I take that back. The Central Division was the best division in hockey this year. Every single one of those teams made the 2014 playoff bracket. So, it's for the fact that he dragged this Jets team with not really that many great defensemen and not really that many great defensive forwards into the playoffs. I mean, the dude is just lights out. If he gets hot, he can win any hockey game. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, do you feel like that's a legitimate argument that you have to look at the eye test this year more so than the stats?
Well, the fact that the season ended early, I really think you have to, because you can't. The raw data isn't complete. Like, you're missing entries essentially, so it's very difficult to just go off numbers alone.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just kind of difficult. Like who can you rely on defensively on the Winnipeg Jets? You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe if Hellebuyck had a couple more defensemen, we could start to say, well, he's got a good team too, but he doesn't. It's just him. It's just Connor Hellebuyck. Like, it's just, he just carried this team. And he deserves the award. Now, do you think he'll actually get the award this year, or do you think that he's going to get shafted because of the stats?
I think he'll get shafted because of stats and his name. They like big names.
So you think it'll go to Tuukka Rask?
Yeah, it's kind of, the awards are kind of publicity stunts.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate. I legitimately think he has a shot, but I think we'll see Tuukka Rask or Vasilevsky. But I think, honestly, like, it's kind of a toss-up. I think he has a good shot, and he deserves it. If he gets shafted on it, I mean, how many times did Henrik Lundqvist get shafted on the award, you know? Because everyone's like, well, he's playing on the New York Rangers. Or because he had like a 2.20 and a 9.20, but then like Jonathan Quick had like a 2.1 or something like that. Like, ridiculous stats, but that's the Vezina. So the Lady Bing, I put Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, and Toivo Teravainen, with honorable mentions to Mitch Marner and Ryan O'Reilly. And I put our boy Nathan McKinnon as the winner. Not really an award that a lot of people pay attention to, but do you have any thoughts on the Lady Bing? I know it's not really an award that a lot of people like hotly debate. Kevin Hayes.
Give it to Kevin Hayes. The guy's the heart of the league. Okay.
Kevin Hayes,
the leader.
If there was if there was a comedy award, I think we could give it to Kevin Hayes. I think he's really funny when he's mic'd up. Like when he said he wanted to retire.
I think he's the heart of the league, and if we don't give it to him, it's a sham.
Are you only saying that because his nose is big? So like,
I love Kevin Hayes. You're judging him right now. Stop it.
He's just a big frat boy, though. Like, he's just a 28-year-old frat boy. Why don't we start the Kevin Hayes Award? If there's a Kevin Hayes Award, what would it be for?
I don't even know.
Most overrated second-line center in the league?
Paid for his personality.
The man whose contract is entirely based on his personality.
Yeah, Mr. Personality Award goes to Kevin Hayes.
Honestly, this year that award might go to PK Subban, no?
He's actually the man. He's hysterical. I love his social content.
PK is great. I love PK Subban. He's awesome. And I don't think he's as bad as this year makes him look. I think he's just having a hard time adjusting to the fact that the New Jersey Devils are shittier than dog shit. But all right, so next year NHL Awards, we want to see the Kevin Hayes Mr. Personality Award. Keep that in mind. I know Gary Bettman listens to the podcast every time we record it, and he takes our opinions very seriously. So Kevin Hayes Mr. Personality Award. So GM of the year, I had Ken Holland, Joe Sakic, and Jim Benning, and I gave it to Jim Benning of the Vancouver Canucks. Do you have any opinions on the GM of the year?
I kind of do. I gave it to the Arizona GM, John Chayka, whatever his name is.
John Chayka?
Yeah. I think he made a lot of great moves during the season with trades. I think that he's working on turning that organization around a little bit.
Yeah, actually, I mean, now you say John Chayka, I think he's doing a fantastic job for the Arizona Coyotes. And I think
they've been in a rut for a long time, and I think that they made moves in positive directions these past couple years, and I think this year could have been a very good year for them, but coronavirus.
Yeah, they were a weird team this year because I had a lot of faith in them. I think I put them second in the Pacific Division in my predictions. And at the time of stoppage, they were doing all right. They were kind of in a slide, and they ended up being the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th best team in the West based on point percentage. So not great. They were 11 out of 15th in point percentage, but they were still in that wild card race. But I think you make a good point in that it's a franchise and an organization that needed some spunk, it needed some spark, it needed some life. And in comes Taylor Hall, who put up some decent numbers with the Coyotes before the stoppage. I think the thing that's going to hold him back is maybe just their slide towards the end of the season. But yeah, I love the job that John Chaika is doing with the Arizona Coyotes. I think he's doing a great job. I think once they finally, I think they're going to have to pick a goaltender this offseason between Antti Ranta and Darcy Kemper. But once they get that figured out, I think that team is set up for long-term success, assuming they can sign Taylor Hall. And assuming they can get Phil Kessel back on track, because he just had a horrendous season this year, but maybe too many hot dogs out there for Phil the Thrill in Arizona. But yeah, I think that's a great pick. I love John Chaika. I gave it to Jim Benning just because I think his Tyler Myers deal, the trade for JT Miller, the move for the decision to bring up Quinn Hughes, everything just worked out great for them this year. They're having a fantastic season. He made that move for Tyler Toffoli as well. And I just think everything's working out great for the Vancouver Canucks, and that's a team that I think is set up for long-term financial success in terms of the contract structure and in terms of the players that they're bringing in. I think that team is set up for great success. But yeah, I think John Chaika should get a nod. I think that's a good point. I'm a little disappointed in myself that I overlooked him and I didn't put him in here. That's a good point. So we'll see if John Chaika gets a nomination there. Do you think that maybe people would be a little bit weary of putting him up for GM of the Year just because he didn't get Taylor Hall to sign a contract extension just yet? And maybe people are a little worried that Taylor Hall is going to end up walking out of that organization?
If Taylor Hall walked, realistically, I don't even think it's the worst thing in the world. Because I think that they could do better for his contract size.
It just means that trade, they basically have just given up all those players for like 20 games of Taylor Hall, though.
Essentially. Which might not have been the worst thing. He did do really well over there. And no one knew that coronavirus was going to happen. So, like, if they had planned on it being a rental, he kind of got fucked up along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a large part of that trade is going to come down to obviously whether or not he signs. Now, of course, all those draft picks have conditions on whether or not Taylor Hall re-signed or if the Coyotes won a playoff series. So some of those picks wouldn't be as high up as they might be, but I think that's got to be priority number one. I think if he walks, it's kind of a loss just because they gave up 3 of their top 15 prospects to get him. And those aren't protected by anything. So, but at the same time, again, like you said, nobody really could have predicted what was going to happen. And at the time, the Coyotes, they just needed offense because Phil Kessel just wasn't getting it done. So, we'll see what happens with Taylor Hall. It's going to be an interesting situation. I really don't know where his mind's at, but we're going to move on to the second to last award here, the Jack Adams Award. My finalists were John Tortorella, Alain Vigneault, and Travis Green, with honorable mentions to John Cooper, Bruce Cassidy, and I said Jared Bednar, but I'm going to change that to Pat Quinn for the New York Rangers. I think he's done a great job. But ultimately, my winner is John Tortorella of the Columbus Blue Jackets. What do you think about the Jack Adams Award this year?
I like Torts. I think Torts does a great job everywhere he goes, honestly. He's a phenomenal coach. As much as he was a fucking scumbag in New York, he really has, like, turned his career around since then.
Yeah, I mean, I gave John Tortorella a lot of credit this year for dealing with all the injuries that the Columbus Blue Jackets had to put together and had to deal with. Think about how many guys on that team got hurt. I mean, at one point they had lost Seth Jones, and they lost Zach Werenski, and they had lost their starting goaltender because of the NHL screw-up. So out went Eunice Corposalo and this guy and that guy. Like, they had so many man games lost of significant players, and yet the Columbus Blue Jackets just kept chugging along. They lost Sergei Bobrovsky and Artemi Panarin, a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner and a franchise-shifting winger. And the beat goes on. The Columbus Blue Jackets just kept on trucking, and I think like a large majority of that credit has to go to John Tortorella. And the fact that this team in the second best division in hockey was fighting for a playoff spot down to the last few games of the season before it stopped. I think all that credit has to go to John Tortorella. I think he's just really instilled in his team blue collar, next man up type mentality. What do you think about Pat Quinn? Do you think that he should get a look for Coach of the Year, or do you think that the Rangers' success more hinges on just the pure talent?
I think players, honestly. I think that Mika just exploded. Kreider finally hit his stride after so many years. So many years.
So many painful seasons.
And Panarin, obviously, Hart Trophy candidate.
Panarin being Artemi Panarin. Would you be mad if AV won the Coach of the Year award?
I'd be livid.
So we have,
because he's honestly though, New York's, I think it's just a really tough place to coach in. I think you have to be a really special type of person, like withstand the pressure.
yeah, I mean, it's not like AV didn't have good teams, and obviously brought you guys to a Stanley Cup final. It just kind of seemed like towards the end he just kind of lost control of the locker room. But
I think that's kind of what happened. Like the team and him weren't on the same page anymore. I don't know what happened, but like something happened and it wasn't.
So we have AV winning the Jack Adams and Kevin Hayes getting Lady Bing / Mr. Personality Award. So big year for the Philadelphia Flyers.
Then you'll have me hanging from my rafters.
What do we got left? Oh yeah, the Hart Trophy. So this is the big one, League
right.
MVP. The finalists I put fourth are Leon Draisaitl, Artemi Panarin, Nathan MacKinnon, with honorable mentions to David Pastrnak, Jack Eichel, and Connor McDavid. And my winner was the bread man, Mr. Artemi Panarin himself. What do you think?
See, like, it's not even really... We really needed someone else here for this to be an important topic, because you and I both agree. I had him down as my best player in the top 10 list. So, obviously, he's my Hart Trophy candidate and winner.
So let me ask you this, because a lot of people, and this is actually kind of going into another topic, but a lot of people, including I think it was either Bob McKenzie or Pierre LeBrun, said that they always place a high premium for players, teams that make the playoffs in their voting. And I guess technically the Rangers can't say they've made the playoffs. Only the top 4 seeds in each division in each conference can say they made the playoffs because they're the play-in round. But do you think that A, should impact the voting at all, or B, give you a little bit pause for thought and say, well, the Rangers technically weren't in a playoff spot. Obviously, the idea is that they probably would have made it because they were on fire, but do you think that impacts that at all?
I hate the fact that the playoffs count towards the awards. They mean absolutely nothing for the awards. The awards are for the regular season, in my opinion. And that's what they should be. They're supposed to be consolation prizes for everyone who didn't make the playoffs, probably. So they can still feel like they competed. It gives players on bad teams a reason to rise up outside of their own personal performance.
So
the award be something that you want to strive towards as a player.
So when you're picking your award winners, you don't take that into account at all, whether or not they made the playoffs.
So Tim Thomas won the Vezina Trophy that year, and I don't think he should have. But he won it because of his playoff performance, without a doubt.
That was 2011, right? I think.
Yeah. I hate that.
Yeah. I don't want to be like tinfoil hat guy, but I pretty much agree with that.
Like it just doesn't make sense. Why? Like why bother?
Yeah, I mean specifically for these awards, like they're the regular season awards, and the fact that a player's team makes the playoffs or not, to me, shouldn't have any impact. Like if we break down the Hart Trophy word for word, it's voted to be the player most valuable to his team. So by the strictest of definitions, we shouldn't really even be looking at a guy like Leon Draisaitl, in my opinion. Um,
No, a guy like Jack Eichel be
yeah,
looked at.
yeah, like Connor McDavid should not be looked at as a Hart Trophy candidate if we take
Maybe not him.
the strictest definition. Um,
He's very important to that team.
yeah, that might be a bit of a stretch, but
That was probably a rough one. Maybe say what's his name?
like anybody on the Toronto Maple Leafs,
What's his name? Fucking Pasta.
Pasternak,
Yeah, like Pasta shouldn't be looked at.
or like I
Not
said,
that
like
Pasta's not good, but like
yeah, they're still the Boston Bruins without David
yeah,
Pasternak.
like either way, they were doing what they were doing.
Or like anybody on the Maple Leafs. It's like, oh no, we lost John Tavares. We only have Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews and William Nylander now, and Morgan Riley. Oh no. Um,
And we have Freddie Anderson in net.
so I think Artemi Panarin
Oh
should win
no.
it because let's be honest here, and this is not me picking on the New York Rangers at all, but if you take Artemi Panarin off this team and replace him with, say, they sign some other mid-tier free agent to kind of bolster the roster, if you
Matt
take
Duchene.
if you take Artemi Panarin off the New York Rangers, they're not even close to a playoff team. I think they're a mid-tier, like
Furthest thing probably.
they'd probably still be better than the Devils. They'd probably still be better than I think the Blue Jackets should have been, but
I would say probably the Blue Jackets, but the Blue Jackets for some reason wound up blowing up.
it's just Tortorella's just a goat. But
It's so strange when like the coach is the difference on the team. Is it not?
I mean, I think that's just a big credit to who he is. Like, I think if you put a lot of other coaches on that team, John Tortorella is an inspirational coach. He's a fire starter, you know, and I think that he really used the injuries to his advantage. Some coaches, you know, they'll give you the typical, "Oh, we got to go out and keep playing," but I really do think John Tortorella uses that to his advantage and being like, "Oh, look, Seth Jones is out. Are we done for the season, boys? Look, everyone's saying we're done for the season. Pack it up. Let's just go home." Um, he turns these things into next man up. Who's going to take his spot? Somebody's getting more minutes. Who's going to earn those minutes? Um,
Yeah,
it's
I agree.
it's incredible. I think if you take almost any other coach outside of maybe the elite of the elite, like a Barry Trotz type coach, I think that the Columbus Blue Jackets are in the basement of the NHL. Um, he's just that good. But what was I saying? Artemi Panarin. So like, I think that they would be like 5 to 10 points out of the playoffs, kind of like playing important games up to the end, but like not really there. Maybe they would have fallen out, maybe would have sold at the trade deadline. I think the stat was that the Rangers' first line of Strome, Zibanejad, and Panarin were a plus, and I think lines 2, 3, and 4 were minuses. And if that doesn't tell you how important Artemi Panarin is to this Rangers team, I mean, again, if you take him out and replace him, even if you replace him with somebody who puts up a respectable season, like a 60-point season, Panarin just brings so many X factors that make teammates around him better because he just draws so much attention in the defensive zone. I don't think you can have a team with the New York Rangers being this close to playoffs without Artemi Panarin being on it. So by strict definition, he should be the Hart winner because you take Panarin off that team, they're not very good. I think they're still okay offensively, but they're just not good. They don't know how to outscore their problems without him on the team. If you take Leon Draisaitl off the Edmonton Oilers, does it hurt them? Absolutely. Leon Draisaitl.
Maybe another poor example.
Well, because Leon Draisaitl is a 100-point player, but you still have Connor McDavid, who's the best player in the NHL.
Yeah, but like Draisaitl led the league in rush with like over 100.
Well, he led the
Like
league in
rushes from his end rather, and like end to end rushes. He like led the league with like 100 plus.
but
I'm just saying like that might not be the best example.
I think so. Yeah, but I just had a stroke. But if it's kind of the situation where it's like if you take Leon off the team, you still have McDavid. If you take Panarin off the Rangers, your next player up is Zibanejad, who's a fantastic first line center, but he's not Connor McDavid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you take David Pastrnak off the Bruins, who's your next best player? Oh, just a guy named Patrice Bergeron, or as much as I hate him, Brad Marchand. Or
Marchand is so good though.
I hate him. He's a rat, but I have to admit he's a good player.
So
But it's like if you take Jack Eichel off the Sabres, who's your next best player? Jeff Skinner? Maybe. Victor Olofsson, maybe? Like, eh. You know, I'm willing to give Nathan McKinnon a pass this year because at one point, Landeskog and Rantanen were hurt. So it was just Mac Daddy on the Colorado Avalanche. And he was carrying that team. So I think he should still be in consideration because for a fair bit of the season, he wasn't playing with either of those guys who was used to playing with. And maybe the next best player after that would be a guy like Nazem Kadri or Cale Makar. But I think Artemi Panarin should win the Hart. I don't think it should even be close when you look at the strict definition of the trophy. But I have a feeling it's probably going to be Leon Draisaitl because, oh my God, he put up 110 points. Like, great. McDavid put up like 105. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's take a look. Let's go to the Edmonton Oilers page. We'll go to the Rangers page, and we'll just compare. Like, we'll go to the Colorado Avalanche page just for the hell of it. So we'll go to stats here. This is just off the cuff. I didn't really prep this or anything.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, Panarin's off the team. Well, Miko Zibanejad put up 75 points in 57 games. Like, oh, that's great. Then who's your next guy? Oh, Ryan Strome. He put up like 59 points. Oh, okay. But then it's like, oh, you take Leon Draisaitl's 110 points off the board. Who's the next closest guy? Oh, you know, Connor McDavid had 97 points in 64 games. Oh, well, that's a big improvement. Like, I hate the fact that we're probably going to get another Leon Draisaitl Hart Trophy when I just don't think he deserves it. And that's, again, he's a top 10 player in the league. He's fantastic. He's an elite player in the NHL. But you can't take away the fact that he's playing with Connor McDavid. And by the definition of the award, he shouldn't win it. Nathan McKinnon has a strong case because it's like, oh, Nathan McKinnon put up 93 points. Who's the next closest guy? Well, Cale Makar put up 50 as a defenseman. The next closest forward had 45 points. So I think McKinnon has a strong argument, but I just think Panarin's argument is just too strong this year. And I think he should be the winner. And I hate the fact that we're probably going to see Leon Draisaitl hoisting that trophy. If McKinnon wins it, I won't be salty. But if Draisaitl wins it, I'm really not going to be happy. But unfortunately.
Yeah, but I don't really agree with you. I think he's very important to that team. I don't. Like, I understand your case, but I just don't really feel the same. I think that those two guys kind of really are that team. And without both of them, they just really don't do anything.
I just think it's almost like it's kind of almost like, you know, if you kick somebody off of like a 2008 Detroit Red Wings, like the rest of the team was still an all-star team, you know? Like, and again, I'm not here to disparage who Draisaitl is. It's just when you remove him from the team, you still have Connor McDavid. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day in my mind. But again, that's not to say he's not a fantastic player. He's definitely one of the best players in the NHL. Absolutely. And I love watching him. I love watching Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl play because it's just magic. Something exciting happens pretty much every time they step on the ice. So, I think that's gonna about wrap it up. Unless you have any last minute things you want to add.
Nah, that's about it. Quick epi.
So
Quick little epi.
the next episode, what we're gonna be doing, in theory, we'll see if it happens, but in theory, what I want to do is the NHL draft lottery is the 26th. So I wanted to get some of the guys together. We were gonna watch the draft lottery, and then we were gonna do a very quick, maybe like 30 to 45 minutes, very quick, kind of just talking about who won the lottery, what it means for that team, and maybe kind of dip our toe into the draft a little bit before, because we're going to do a full draft episode, but maybe just a little gut reaction, just kind of quick off the dome, like, wow, this means that X team is going to get Lafreniere, and what does this mean for them? So keep your eye out for that, and we will see you guys again next time.